Hello students, welcome to this present segment, the segment on the modern element in literature, and we are talking about what Arnold regards as an important inward characteristic, of such a modern period. Modern within quotes, because it may not be a modern period in the chronological sense, but a modern period in the spirit. A modern being an adulatory adjective over here. It's the growth of a tolerant spirit, and we are talking about how this has been further developed into the idea of acceptance rather than toleration. Of course, Arnold speaks of toleration over here. To see things rationally, this is how he ends, to judge by the rule of reason and not by the impulse of prejudice or caprice. So, to see things rationally rather than judging them by preconceived notions about morality and social practice. Now, let's come to the next paragraph. Well, now with respect to the presence of all these characteristics in the age of Pericles, we possess the explicit testimony of an immortal work, the history of Thucydides. Arnold was very fond of Thucydides. And if you remember, at the end of Dover Beach, he gives there is an allusion to the Peloponnesian War, which is narrated, the Battle of Epipode in the Peloponnesian War, which is again narrated by Thucydides. The Athenians first, he says, speaking of the gradual development of the Grecian society up to a period where Peloponnesian War commenced, the Athenians first left off the habit of wearing arms. That is a mark of a superior civilization, had in the age of Pericles become general in Greece, had long been visible in Athens. So they were the first who did not display power, main power, physical power in their attire. But Elizabethan Age, which is considered, this is where he points out the paradoxes of modernity, so to say. The Elizabethan Age, which is again considered as a very fruitful period in the history of England, wearing of arms was universal in England. It's a part of the dress. Let's come to the end of this paragraph. The scholar Casaubon, who settled in England in the reign of James I, as you can see, is Jacobean age, starting from 1603 and carrying on till 1625. And it's the age that succeeded the Elizabethan age. Bears evidence to the want here, even at the time, the convenience of life, which are already to be met with on the continent of Europe. On the other hand, the taste for fantastic, for excessive personal adornment, to which the portrait of time bear testimony, is admirably set forth in the work of a great novelist, who was also a very truthful antiquarian, in the Kenilworth of Sir Walter Scott. Now this is also there in Kenilworth. We all remember the description in the 13th and 14th chapters of the second volume of Kenilworth of the barbarous magnificence. Look at the use of oxymoron over here. Barbarous magnificence. So much so that it almost becomes a mark of, rather than a mark of civilization, it seems a bit uncivilized. Barbarous magnificence, the fierce vanities of the dress of the period. Pericles praises the Athenians that they had discovered source of recreation for the spirit to counterbalance the labor of the body. And we have towards the end of this paragraph, I'm quoting at length, we have freedom, says Pericles, for individual diversities of opinions and characters. So once again, he has laid down those rules that one is removing the ensigns of power from personal attack, and again over here it is a tolerance in opinion and ability to accept others. For individual diversities of opinion and character, we do not take offense at the taste and habit of our neighbor if they differ from our own. Yet in Greece, in the Athens of Pericles, there is toleration. But in England, England of the 16th century, there is hardly any kind of religious toleration, as we know. The Puritans were then in full growth. And the Puritans were a kind of as you know, a kind of fundamentalist Protestants. And they were always in favor of clamping down things. They were, as you know, very intolerant towards the theatre. Theatre was actually stopped in 1642, and from 1642 to 1660 there was no theatre. No theatre during the Puritan interregnum, 1649 to 1660. In fact, it was clamped down right from 1642. So with regard to these characteristics of civilization of a modern spirit, which we have hitherto enumerated, the superiority, it will be admitted, rests with the age of Pericles. Okay? So if you compare, he has always asked you to compare, and Matthew Arnold is one of the earliest comparatists, as you know. So if you compare the Elizabethan age and the age of Pericles, you will find the age of Pericles comes much before the Elizabethan age. But if you compare, you will find that in terms of these parameters, the Elizabethan age falls short this period, the Athenian period of Pericles' rule. Let us pass to what we said to the supreme characteristic of a highly developed and modern age, the manifestation of a critical spirit. This is what came last in that paragraph with which we ended the previous segment. The endeavor after a rational arrangement of appreciation of facts. Now, and then he goes on to say how Thucydides, why he is so attracted to Thucydides, how Thucydides is so accurate, and how Thucydides evinces marks of the modern. No doubt Thucydides' criticism of the Trojan War is not perfect. But observe how in these and many other points he labors to correct popular errors, to assign their true characters to facts, complaining, as he does so, of men's habit of uncritical reception of current stories. People often tend to uncritically receive stories, and particularly the spiced up stories. The media has another way of referring to it. Particularly stories which are spiced up are often very palatable. So little a matter of care to most men, he says, is a search after truth. Very few men really care for the search of truth, and so inclined are they to take up any story which is ready to their hand. He himself, he continues, has endeavored to give a true picture. He himself has endeavored to give a true picture, which is a very rare thing in those days. And perhaps because he was not very celebrated among his contemporaries. As you know, among the two Greek historians, Herodotus was more well-known, more celebrated, particularly because of these spiced up stories. They had two completely different styles of writing. Herodotus would spice up things, and Thucydides would never write anything about something that he hadn't seen. And he would always want a kind of a critical spirit to operate in whatever he writes. It most often happens that these people fall into absolute minorities and they are not popular. Society wants you, whether it's intellectual society or academic society, it wants you to live up to the way they want you to go. You have to adapt to the society. they will bring you down. They will try and bring you down the moment they see that you are not adapting to the way they think leading life is, or an intellectual deliberation is, or an intellectual exposure of a particular fact is. That's why Herodotus was so popular in his time than Thucydides. Today, in the assessment of Arnold, people like Arnold, Thucydides, as you can see, is much more modern than Herodotus. Modern history obviously gives a lot of importance to myth and other things, to these cooked up stories, to some extent the socio-cultural history. It doesn't completely deny the importance of cooked up stories, but still what is adopted in the modern period, what is considered to be modern, is the ability to write in a neutral way, so that a critical assessment can be made of it. See how he talks about himself, how Thucydides talks about himself. He has endeavored to give a true picture, and believes that in the main he has done so. Basically he has done so. For some readers, his history may want the charm of the uncritical, half-fabulous narrative of earlier writers, but for such as desire to gain a clear knowledge of the past, as thereby to the future, which will surely, after the course of human things, represent again hereafter, if not the very image, but the near resemblance of the past. If such shall judge my work to be profitable, I shall be well content. So if I can't actually represent the image of the past, at least I can give an impression what the past was like. Half-fabulous narratives of earlier writers. Of course, we are not talking about the example that I would be giving you. It's not earlier than Thucydides, but let's talk about travel narratives a little bit. And you will later study Gulliver's Travels. In fact, you have studied Gulliver's Travels this semester, where you know how the travel narrative form is being satirized, is being mocked, is being parodized. Now, let me give you one instance of a travel narrative which is so cooked up. The travel narratives of Marco Polo, for instance. It's true that Marco Polo went down the Bay of Bengal, and there is a reference to the shore temple of Mahabalipuram, which we have some of us have seen. So he saw the shore temple from his journey, through his journey, or in his journey. But it is also true, very true, that he didn't reach Andaman as he had claimed, because he describes the people of Andaman to be horse-headed. So perhaps he got to know a little bit of the Jarwas, but he didn't have a first-hand experience. We can very well understand that. So the adventures of Marco Polo happen to be quite fictitious at some extent. The moment he describes them as horse-headed, we get to understand the veracity of these descriptions. So this is not there in Thucydides, who is much earlier. What language shall we properly call this? It is modern language. Rather than language, you must talk about attitude. The attitude is modern. Okay. Let's come to the next paragraph. Let us now turn for a contrast to a historian of the Elizabethan Age. So he's taking up Pericles' Athens and the Elizabethan period. Also a man of great mark and ability. Also a man of action. Also a man of the world. Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh writes the history of the world, as Thucydides had written the history of Peloponnesian ware. Let us hear his language. Let us mark his point of view. Let us see what problems occur to him for solution. Seeing, he says, that we digress in all the ways of our lives, yes, seeing the life of man is nothing else but digression, I may be better excused in writing their lives and actions. Where are the preliminary facts which he discusses? As Thucydides discusses the Trojan War and the early naval powers of Britain, and which are to lead up to the main inquiry. We will try and understand this part in the next segment. We have already run out of time, and this is about Sir Walter Raleigh's History of the World. Thank you, students.